Hi, welcome to the channel. So today I'm reacting to a video from Premier History. This is World War II hero earns 2 Victoria Crosses, Charles Upham. The Victoria Cross is Great Britain's version of the Medal of Honor. However, the Victoria Cross is much more difficult to attain. Charles Upham is actually the only combat armed soldier to receive more than one. The other 2 recipients, I believe, were in the medical corps. And something to note, current law actually prohibits a soldier from receiving more than one. Let's get to it.
The Victoria Cross is the highest military honour awarded to British and Commonwealth personnel for acts of valour. It's comparable to the American Medal of Honor. However, since the mid-1800s, 3,473 Medals of Honor have been awarded, while only 1,358 VCs. Getting just one means you've demonstrated the kind of heroism that's rare outside a Hollywood movie. Getting 2, that's almost superhuman.
Before World War I, one of the prerequisites of receiving this award was if you actually died.
This is a story of a man who achieved that feat. The New Zealand-born Charles Upham was and remains the only combatant to receive 2 Victoria Crosses. During World War II, while the Nazis swept across Europe and Africa, Upham would enlist with the New Zealand Army and set sail in early 1941. In March 1941, 2nd Lieutenant Upham found himself in Crete, and it was here that he would earn his first VC by performing a series of remarkable exploits, showing outstanding leadership, tactical skill, and utter indifference to danger. On the 22nd of May, he commanded an attack and fought his way forward, unsupported, for over 2.5 kilometres, against a defence strongly organised in depth. Numerous enemy posts were destroyed, but on 3 occasions Upham's section was temporarily held up. On the first occasion, under heavy fire from a machine gun nest, he advanced to close quarters armed only with a pistol and grenades, discouraging the occupants and allowing his soldiers to take out the remaining enemy. More of his soldiers were held up by 2 machine guns in a house. He went in and threw a grenade through the window, destroying the crew of 1 machine gun, the other machine gun being silenced by the fire of his section. On the 3rd occasion, he crawled to within 13 metres of a machine gun post and killed the gunners with a grenade. When his company withdrew from the town, he helped carry a wounded man whilst under fire, and together with another officer rallied more men to go back and carry out the other wounded soldiers. He was then sent to link up with an isolated company. With another soldier, he went through enemy territory for nearly 550 metres, killing 2 Germans on the way. He found the company and brought it back to the battalion's new position. Without this action, the company would have been completely cut off.
I'm not saying it was the exact same scenario, but remember in episode 8, The Breaking Point, during the Battle of Foy, when Captain Spears actually ran through the German position just to link up with another company, and then he ran back unscathed? I mean, respect to them, because that is something that I couldn't even imagine doing.
During the following 2 days, his platoon occupied an exposed position and were continuously under fire. Upham was blown over by 1 mortar shell and painfully wounded by a piece of shrapnel in his left shoulder by another. He also took a bullet in the foot. He ignored these wounds and remained on duty. On the 25th of May, his platoon was heavily engaged and came under severe mortar and machine gun fire. While his platoon stopped under the cover of a ridge, Upham went forward, observed the enemy, and brought the platoon up when the Germans advanced. Upham and his men killed over 40 enemy and forced the remainder to fall back. When his platoon was ordered to retire, he sent them back, but he went on to warn other troops that they were being cut off.
And that is what good leaders do. They continue the mission and look out for their men. And something that was not mentioned was that before he actually joined the active duty army, he was in the New Zealand Territorial Defence Service, which I think is equivalent to the National Guard that the United States has. I might be wrong though. If you know for sure, then drop it in the comments.
During this time, he was fired on by 2 Germans. He fell and acted like he was dead, then crawled into a position and, having the use of only one arm, rested his rifle in the fork of a tree. As the Germans came forward, he killed them both. The second German got so close that he actually hit the muzzle of Upham's rifle as he fell. On the 30th of May, his platoon was ordered to deal with some enemy which had advanced down a ravine towards company headquarters. He climbed a steep hill to the west of the ravine, placed his men in positions on the slope overlooking it, and himself went to the top. He cleverly induced the enemy to expose itself, and at a range of 450 metres, shot 22, causing the remainder to disperse in panic. He would receive his second VC due to exploits between the 14th and 15th of July 1942.
Something interesting is that when his commander told him that he was being nominated for this award, he was adamantly against it. He did not feel like he was deserving of it at all. However, his commander finally convinced him to accept it because he said that it was for his bravery and service to the unit, which I think says a lot about him.
Now promoted to captain, he was commanding a company in the Western Desert in North Africa. During this time, he was wounded twice. Once, when he was crossing open ground, he took enemy fire while trying to inspect his forward sections.
Just for some context, New Zealand forces had actually been in danger of being overrun by Rommel as he was pushing into Egypt. They were actually able to make a break through British lines. They succeeded, and then the New Zealand division actually set up a defensive position in the town of El Alamein. And this battle is actually called the Second Battle of El Alamein, or Alamein. If I ever do a video on that battle, I'll put it either down below or as an end screen.
He was then wounded when he completely destroyed an entire truckload of German soldiers with hand grenades. He insisted on remaining with his men to take part in the final assault. During the opening stages of the assault, Upham's company was part of the reserves, but when communications with the forward troops broke down, he was instructed to send up an officer to report back on the progress of the attack. He went out himself, armed with a German MG-42, and after several sharp encounters with enemy machine gun posts, succeeded in bringing back the required information. Just before dawn, the reserve battalion was ordered forward, but when it had almost reached its objective, it came under heavy fire from a strongly defended enemy, which consisted of 4 machine gun posts and a number of tanks. Upham, without hesitation, led his company in a determined attack on the 2 nearest strongpoints on the left flank. His voice could be heard above the sounds of battle, cheering on his men, and in spite of the fierce resistance of the enemy and heavy casualties on both sides, the objective was captured. During the engagement, Upham himself destroyed a German tank and several guns and vehicles with grenades. Although he was shot through the elbow by a machine gun and had his arm broken, he went on again to a forward position and brought back some of his men who had become isolated. He continued to dominate the situation until his men had beaten off an enemy counterattack and consolidated the vital position. Exhausted by pain from his wound and weak from loss of blood, Upham was then removed to the regimental aid post, but immediately upon his wound being dressed, he returned to his men, remaining with them all day under heavy artillery and mortar fire.
How does somebody actually find the strength to actually do that? I imagine that 1, he's just a tough son of a bitch, but 2, I'm sure he has some adrenaline also kicking in. But it was the same thing with the Battle of Crete. He was injured, he could hardly eat, suffering from diarrhea for days on end, yet he still was able to do all that stuff. I mean, this man is a legend. Wow.
He was again severely wounded and being unable to move, fell into enemy hands with only 6 other survivors.
6 other survivors of his unit. However, I think 500 or 1,000 New Zealanders were actually taken prisoner that day.
When he was recommended for a second VC, King George VI was sceptical given it was such a rare award. He asked an army general, "Does he deserve it?" The general replied, "In my respectful opinion, sir, Upham won the VC several times over."
You don't win the VC or Medal of Honor, you actually earn it. That's an important distinction.
As a POW, he had numerous escape attempts. one by leaping from a truck which resulted in a broken ankle. During another escape, he climbed out a train bathroom window but knocked himself unconscious on the tracks. Finally, he became entangled in barbed wire fence trying to escape from a camp. A guard pointed a pistol at his head and threatened to shoot him. Upham calmly lit a cigarette.
And they didn't mention it, but when he was injured, he was actually taken to an Italian hospital, and he tried to escape there as well.
After this, he was sent to the infamous Colditz Castle, where he again tried to escape. However, the castle was eventually liberated in 1945.
That castle actually housed POWs with repeated escape attempts. Kind of like the same camp that we saw in Steve McQueen's The Great Escape. If you've never seen that movie before, then please watch it. It's a classic war movie.
Upham would marry and return to New Zealand, where he lived out his days. He died in Canterbury on the 22nd November 1994. A statue commemorating his achievements currently sits in the town of Amberley, New Zealand.
So thank you for watching. My utmost respect to Charles Upham. He truly was an amazing soldier and human being. When he actually returned home from war, his community actually raised money to buy him a farm, which he declined. Instead, he put that money toward a scholarship program, and he then took out a wartime loan or something and bought himself a farm. He lived a very quiet life of farming, and he was very dedicated to the community and to his family. If you do want to watch a video series all about basic training for the New Zealand Defence Forces, then please check out this video right here.